love to travel the world. I love to plan things. I'm very organized, so it kind of just fits with who I am.
Welcome back, all of our Courage, Confidence, Connections podcast fans. I have a wonderful guest today and a friend for some time. One of my first few friends in Central Oregon, Stephanie Redelings. Welcome, Stephanie.
Hi, Janice. How's it going?
Doing great. I hope you are. We're going to have a good time today. And this is your first podcast, and we're just going to have fun with it. And you'll get a little bit of a, feeling for the whole thing. Who knows? You could wind up doing one in the future too. But so tell our audience a little bit about you, and then we'll just go from there.
Okay, well, I've kind of bounced all over the place. I have my undergraduate degree is in photography, and I had my own photography business for several years, and then digital came around, and I wasn't excited about it, so I went back to school, and I've been teaching for the last, I don't know, 15, 16 years.
That long?
Yeah. Yeah. And then, I still might do photos that I want to do, on my own and stuff, but I'm not doing it for full time. And then I recently went to part-time teaching so that I could start my travel business, something that I love. I love to travel the world. I love to plan things. I'm very organized, so it kind of just fits with who I am. And my husband and I are trying to look at things we can do as we talk about retiring or getting on the road and then maybe not being in one spot at all the time. So,
That's exciting. You've really got to love travel. I'm not one to enjoy going to airports and getting delayed flights and all of that stuff. So I have a lot of memories of some weird trips and not all good, but they make for good blogs when I write. Anyway,
but
so
yeah, flying is getting to be really difficult, actually. They've gone to the point where, you're not just paying for, you buy a flight, you think you have everything, but then you have to pay for your seat, then you got to pay for your luggage, and then it can be really tricky now. And you're not guaranteed anything. I think one of the worst experiences I had was I was flying from San Diego back to Chicago, and I was on Southwest, and we went. I don't remember. I think we went to Phoenix and then Kansas City and then Chicago, and it was a red eye flight.
mhm.
Um, so we got into Kansas City late. Things were closed, whatever. And then we were almost to Chicago. I think we were less than an hour out, and they're like, "Sorry, folks, we got to go back to Kansas City."
Oh
So
no.
they had, I guess they had three young ladies who were underage that were traveling, minors traveling alone, and they got off in Kansas City and they didn't get back on. And I guess liability wise, they had to go get them. So we all had to go back and then back to Chicago. So yeah, and it was funny. My mom heard about it on the news. She goes, "Oh my gosh, that was your flight." I mean, yeah. So it was a big deal.
Oh my goodness. You don't think about things like that. Now, obviously, I don't have children, but I can only imagine the liability issues and the problems that could occur.
Right, right. And that's why they ask you to, register them as minors traveling alone. So they have somebody that keeps track of them and make sure that they're doing what they're doing. And I think the oldest one was like 16 or 17, so they thought it'd be okay, but not. So
Oh my
it's a
goodness.
big deal.
Well, I got to know the Denver airport all too well last time I flew to North Carolina. Never want to repeat that experience, but I did learn something. Carry a neck pillow, a hoodie, a blanket, and what else was it? Anyway, I've never been so cold for so long in my life.
Oh
They
my goodness.
they shut everything down in Denver, and you can't get anything until like 5:30 in the morning or something. Plus, they turn the air down to about 50 degrees, and I'm not it's brutal.
Oh my goodness. Was that a weather delay or something that you guys?
Well, I was flying back from North Carolina last time I was there, and I was really privileged to fly first class. It worked out really good. but that didn't help when we were boarding, because what happened was there was a flight in, I think, New Jersey or Philadelphia, somewhere, that was going to be our flight connecting, but they had trouble on the runway. They ran off the runway, and so we had to take another flight, which was the following. No, was it the following day? Anyway, I got stuck in the Raleigh-Durham airport, which I knew well, and that was not a problem because I'm from there. But that delayed catching the flight in Denver, which was overnight. And I was like, you mean there was nothing. They didn't have any bars open. They didn't have any coffee places open.
That could have been fun.
It could have been fun if they'd have had a bar open, and but I did learn, wear a hoodie around your neck, carry a neck pillow and a little blanket, because it is brutal in Denver if you get stuck.
Wow.
So
Wow. Yeah. I never thought about that. I wonder why I mean, I guess because there's really nobody there. It doesn't make sense for them to heat it.
yeah, I don't know, but somebody told me a number of airports do that overnight because they've got cleaning crews and all that going on. But I was the first one at the Starbucks at 5:30, 5 o'clock, or whenever they open.
Yeah.
I was number one. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
I was a hungry girl and I was wanting some coffee, and I'd been awake most of the night. I dozed, and it doesn't feel safe to sleep
No,
there.
it doesn't. It doesn't. I'm surprised they didn't give you a hotel room at least for a few hours.
Oh, they tried, but they wanted $400 for it or something.
Oh, they should comp that, but
I agree. I just decided not to fight it, but
yeah.
yeah, if that's
Yeah.
the worst that happened. But it was good to get back and see good old Redmond, Oregon when I got
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, you get spoiled with our little airport. It's like you know, and you don't have to be there 2 hours in advance, and you don't have. I mean, there's really no reason to be because there's really never that long of a line. I mean, it's pretty spoiled when you get to that. And like before here, I lived in Santa Barbara, and that's a tiny little airport too. There's no like long lines there either. Like,
Yeah, I'm surprised with Santa Barbara, but I've not been there. With the Raleigh-Durham Airport, I'm going to date myself here a little bit, I think. But when I moved there, no, I was born and raised in North Carolina, but when I moved to the Raleigh area, the first flight I took out was, oh, too long ago. And they only had one building. If you've ever seen the Raleigh-Durham Airport, it is monstrous now. But it was like the size of Redmond. It was the
mhm,
size of Redmond. And,
tiny.
and now it is a huge international airport. Huge. Um,
It's in a good spot for that though, because it's on the coast. It's close to the coast.
and
It's a good, it's close to the Caribbean. Like it makes sense that it's an international airport where it is now.
Oh, it's a beautiful airport too. Although the highway, let me tell you what, they've got beltways going around beltways going around beltways. And even though I had driven my whole adult life there, last time I went, I got so turned around. I flew in, we landed at dark. It was after dark. So I was like, oh my gosh, it used to just be Highway 40, and now there's like a 340, 445, 46, 47, 40. I don't know how many they've got now. But needless to say, um, there's some travel tips you can give people too. Know your way out when you can.
Oh yeah, Dallas Fort Worth is incredibly confusing as well. It's got all of that going around there too, and
Atlanta
several
too.
airports are like that because they just keep growing, and so
Mhm.
they have to add, and then they have to have room for that, and they have to have parking, and so a lot of them are a little bit crazy like that.
Atlanta is as well. I noticed because I've been to Atlanta and DC and some of the big ones. The only memory I have of the Chicago airport was I think it was my first time flying, and we got stuck on the runway because there was an engine problem. Now that was scary for the first time flyer.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I always think of, people get so upset. There was one time I don't remember which airport it was, but I was changing planes, and the plane coming in, we kept getting delayed and kept getting delayed. And it was later and later and later, and people were getting all mad. And it's like, well, come to find out, the plane had got hit by lightning on the way in. And I'm like, I'd rather know that
Oh my word.
maybe I have a better plane chance. I don't know what happened to that plane as it got hit by lightning, like so things might not work. I'd rather wait and be late wherever I'm going than chance that. So it's like sometimes people get so upset over things like, you know what are you going to do? Like you can't change it. You're not going to change it. So, and they have certain restrictions as far as like the pilots and the people who I don't
What do they call them?
the attendants, the flight attendants,
Mhm.
they only can work so many hours and so many on their shift, and then they have to have a certain amount of time off. And so a lot of the times it's like, yeah, it'd be easier to take the next plane that's coming in instead and make everybody late. But those, they have a certain schedule. And I'm sure that schedule is a mess. Like, if you've ever done any scheduling for any kind of job whatsoever,
Yeah.
like if you do it just for a small business, it can still be pretty tough. Can you imagine doing it for airlines
Oh,
everywhere? That scheduling just has to be a nightmare.
oh, I can't even imagine. Well, I got a question for you. Our
Sure.
listeners that travel, I really want to do a cross-country trip on Amtrak, on train.
Oh, yeah.
That just sounds like fun. Do you book train trips?
I do. I do actually. Yeah. And it's interesting in the US, train isn't used as much as in Europe.
Mhm.
Europe is pretty much I've heard people that have done trains in Europe and then they come and do Amtrak here and they're like, it's not as on time or it's not as clean or it's not and it's hit and miss. I have a lady who's done actually North Carolina to Washington D.C. and North Carolina to New York City a couple of times, and she's like, going there was great, or going there was dirty, but coming back was really great. I mean, so it kind of hit and miss as far as like the trains is that, but the schedules are pretty on time, so that's nice. And then certain ones, like there's one that goes down the Pacific coast that has, sleeper cars, and they even have like a car for like kids to play around in because people travel with their kids, right? So there's different ones that can do that. And not always does every train have that, but it's nice to have if you're going for a long time.
Yeah, I have a friend that traveled on their honeymoon. They got married. They were from Prineville here in Central Oregon, and they got a train. They set up a train trip with a sleeper car, of course, to go all the way to. I think they went to New York City or somewhere in the Northeast,
Yeah.
and then they dropped down, and then they left North Carolina and came the southern route. So they got to see all of that. That
Oh,
would
wow.
Isn't that amazing? Because they had the big viewer car, whatever those
Right.
things are called, but a
Yeah.
sleeper car. And trains, I think, are very kind of romantic and nostalgic. I think trains are
Yeah.
so cool.
They are. And they, there are some companies that do like tours like that. Actually was just funny that you say that because my mom has friends that are looking at doing their anniversary trip in 2026, and they were talking about maybe seeing some of the national parks, but she also has limited mobility, so she uses a walker. And they do have like train trips that go to several national parks, so you can see several of them on like this 9 to 10 day tour. And you
Mm.
get off, I mean, you go on the train, you have like your own little car, and then you get off and you do your stay at, like, you go to Bryce Canyon and then you stay overnight there in a hotel, and then you get on another one. It's really interesting, so there's like lots of different options.
Oh, that's fun. I mean, I've always loved trains. And of course, in North Carolina, I don't know if it's still around. You'll have to check. You're the travel agent. But as kids, I think we went to Tweetsy Railroad several times, and that's in the Blue Ridge Mountains, or
Oh,
was.
cool.
Yeah, Tweetsy. And it's just they're real. It's a real train, but
Yeah.
it's nostalgic and restored. But-
Yeah, they have some of them like that too. Because another one we were looking at was in New England, the fall colors. So
Mm.
there's ones that they go out of Boston and then it goes up north to Maine, and they do like a lobster.
Ooh.
Like you can go out on the lobster boats if you want, and then they have like a certain. It's called the cog something that goes into like Acacia National Park, and it's
Mm.
an older nostalgic train like that. And then yeah, so there's a lot of really cool things you can do different ways. There's not just one way to do something, which is nice.
Yeah, well, we've known each other for some time, and I've always known you love to travel, but you're not an Oregonian, so tell our audience a little bit about where you grew up and a little bit about your childhood that may have put you in this general direction.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that because I'm actually originally from California. And but we did move to Oregon when I was young. I was in second grade when we moved to Oregon. But my parents, so my mom grew up really poor, and so they didn't do a lot of things. They took us camping a lot. But then we also did different things. Like I remember going, and I don't know how old I was, but we take the camper and we went like down the California coast and we went to all the missions. So at every mission, I have all these little charms from each mission that we went to that you could get.
Mhm.
Um, and they each have their own history based on why they were put there and what was there. And like the one in Santa Barbara is like a pink color, so they're very specific as to what they are. There's one in downtown Ventura that you drive by and not even know it's there. So it's kind of just tucked in with the rest of downtown. So it's interesting. They all are very pretty, very interesting and different. And if you're not from California or the West Coast, you might not know that. It's a big thing. Other thing, my mom always got on these kicks. My mom gets on these kicks. So the missions was one thing. Another time she was into covered bridges. And
Oh,
Oregon has a lot of covered bridges. So we go to all these different covered bridges and check them out. And some of them I don't think are very worthwhile, but uh, and then she got into lighthouses. So like her favorite one is still Yaquina Head and out of Newport. But when I lived in Chicago, we actually went around Lake Michigan and saw a bunch of lighthouses around Lake Michigan in Michigan and Indiana and Wisconsin. So
wow.
a lot of it was just, I think we just did things. And even though, like I said, my mom, she grew up poor, so she didn't get to do anything. But and then we always had at some point my parents bought a partnership in a condo at the coast, at the Oregon coast. So we would go to the Oregon coast almost every month for like at least the weekend. If not, if we had time, we'd do the week, but it would be at least a 3-day weekend. Usually we would go do that. And at some point they started cruising. My parents started cruising when I was a kid. We never got to go with them, but
Oh,
they would go.
no.
So like every 3 or 4 years they would go on a cruise, and then in the meantime we would do something. So they would take us places. I One of my favorite memories of one of the things, we went to Hawaii for 2 weeks, and we saw all four islands in 2 weeks, and we saw a lot. My mom is a traveler that has to see everything while she's there. um, and you come home and you're exhausted. And
Mm,
I found out from my sister yesterday that she does the same thing because her and her husband just got back from Egypt,
wow.
and they've been gone for 2 weeks. And I think her husband was like, "I need to sleep for 2 weeks because like it's just a lot." He goes, "I don't feel like I'm retired. I feel like I was working because we had to be somewhere every time."
Yeah.
So I don't like to travel that. I personally don't like to travel that way because I figure I want to enjoy myself too. I want to see some of the things. I want to experience some of the food. I want to experience some of the culture, but I also want to relax too. I don't want to come back so exhausted that I have nothing, I just, that I need another vacation. So that's my
Exactly.
preference. And everybody has their thing, like everybody has what they do. So for my parents, the cruises were best for them because my dad could relax while they are cruising because you're on the ship, and then they go to port and they get off and they do their thing, and then they go back at the ship and then they relax. So that was the best for them. um, my husband calls it a sampler because you're never at port long enough to do too
Oh,
much. I mean, you can do an excursion, you can walk around or whatever, but you're there for like 8 hours and then you move on. So he says, you go, you see what is there, and then you decide, oh, I want to go back there because I really liked it. I want to go there for a week. That's kind of what his take is on that. Um, and I like that you can travel. I mean, I like cruise. I like a lot of different things, but cruising is nice because you don't have to drive everywhere. So
right.
you go to one port, you go do stuff, and then you at night while you're sleeping or whatever, they get you somewhere else. So that's kind of nice too.
Yeah. I enjoyed it when I took my cruise, and it's been quite a long time ago, but I traveled on Norwegian cruise lines. I don't even
Mhm.
know if they're still around.
They
But
are.
yeah, it was really a lot of fun. I went by myself and I've had people say, why? I'm like, because I wasn't seeing anybody. I was recently divorced and
Yeah,
it was just a nice way for me to get away, have a complete, not just privacy, but relaxation because there were no cell phones. And
yeah.
that I just told everybody how long that's been. And but I got to tell you, if your mother wants to see lighthouses, North Carolina has a phenomenal selection of lighthouses, and you get to ride on the ferry boats to go see some of them.
That's
It,
pretty cool.
yeah,
That's
it really is. And of course, they've got the famous Hatteras Lighthouse that was
right.
moved, you know. So if she
Yeah.
hasn't been there, she's going to need to take a trip to North Carolina.
Trying to think if she has. I know they've done the northern coast, but I don't know if they've done the southern coast. I don't know. That's good to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there are so
Ask her.
many, so many. Yeah, I did go see Hatteras after they moved it, and you got to see how far they moved it, and the whole process was phenomenal. To learn about how you move something that big, and I mean they have to be built sturdy just because of where they are, but
Right.
to move one, it was a if you haven't, I don't, it's on YouTube, so our guests can go look on YouTube for moving the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse in Hatteras, North Carolina.
Is that the black and white one? Black and
Mhm.
white. Yeah. It's a beautiful lighthouse.
Oh, I know.
Gives
I
you kind of an insight as to what they used to have to do when they built the pyramids and stuff. Like, can you imagine they didn't have all the tools we have now?
oh, I know. I know. We don't have a clue, honestly, what how things used to be done. It
Mm-mm.
just is so different, isn't it? And okay, so you can book people on cruises, flights. You can plan their whole trip for them.
Yes.
That is
Yes.
so cool. How long
Yeah.
did how long did it take to get, you love to travel, but how long did it take you to get to a point where you could do this for somebody else and learn all the ins and outs of all of this stuff, especially the airlines. Oh my Lord.
Airlines. The airlines are the trickiest. And you know what? I don't know it all. I'm going to be honest, I don't know it all. I'm still learning, I'm still learning. Someone asked me, I mean, literally in April, I had two ladies that were going to a Fraser Brooks conference in Turkey. And I never thought about Turkey before. And they're like, we want to go a little early, so we have place, and then we wanted to, do stuff, and then we want to spend a couple days in Istanbul. And so I started researching Turkey and what was going on there, and and what I could do for them. And they had an amazing time. That's where they went to the spice markets one day. And it was tricky too because right before she left, we were watching it really hard because there was some unrest over there.
Mhm.
It was more demonstrations you just had to stay away from in certain parts of town. Um, but trying to find safe hotels, safe area of town for two ladies that were upper 60s, I think. They were just traveling alone. They wanted to make sure that they're safe,
Right.
and then also something to do, something fun to do. So they went on a Bosphorus cruise and spice market um excursion, and then they were in Anatolia, which is where the conference was, and they went and did like a day tour of that town, which is along the Mediterranean. But I didn't really know much about Turkey. I'm like, why do I want to go to Turkey? But
Yeah.
it's got some really interesting things there. Like I never thought about it, to be honest. You know,
Oh.
so
What
it's stuff that I can learn and I can ask other people. I have a whole network of people behind me. If I don't know, someone's gonna be able to help me. So that's nice.
what's the most unique trip you've booked so far?
I would say that probably was it. The
Really?
one to Turkey. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, I imagine in doing this, because you've been doing it for over a year now, right?
Yeah. Almost a year and a half. Yeah.
Almost a year and a half.
Yeah.
Wow. And what a difference from teaching school, especially the young ones. I think you were teaching fourth grade or third grade or something.
Fourth has been my biggest grade that I've been teaching for
Cool.
sure. Yeah, but some of my organization skills that I have and stuff is what helps too,
Hmm.
and just wanting to learn. I want to learn about these other places. I'm like, I have actually, I don't know. Now that you say that, I just I have a couple going on their honeymoon to Belize this summer in July. And we went back and forth because isn't known for all inclusive, and they really wanted all inclusive with the drinks and all that, just because they didn't want to have to worry about it, because it just makes it easy. But Belize is not known for that. It's Belize, Costa Rica, most of those don't have the all inclusive.
Mm.
Um, so we went back and forth, and we found one we really really liked, and they're undergoing renovations right when they were needing to go. So then we had to start all over again. Okay, what can we do now? So but I'm very excited to hear what they think of where they're going in Belize in July. So
Nice. Wow. Okay, so in your booking all these trips for other people, I know you guys have been on a few yourself. What is your next place you want to go that you have heard good things about?
oh, that's tricky.
Oh,
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, my son he's just finishing up his freshman year. So I definitely want to do something as a family and with our older son sometime in the next 2 years before he decides to do whatever.
right.
And but me personally, I really want to go to Thailand. And my husband's like, why do you want to go to Thailand? And I just it's a mix of lots of gold and rich and the culture there. They have beautiful beaches. And then they have like elephant sanctuaries where they're like helping elephants and stuff. So it just intrigues me. And my husband's like, well, you don't really like Thai food. I like a little bit of Thai food. I'm like, well, maybe I'll lose some weight.
Oh my goodness. Well, I do have some friends that they had a chance to go to Thailand. The pictures were beautiful. I think what for me the red flag is, oh my gosh, it takes 2 days to fly there practically. That's a
Yeah.
lot. Other side of the world.
Yeah. That is the tricky part is the long flights to get somewhere like that. So yeah. I mean, or I wait and we wait until we retire and they have a world cruise that you can go on and then you don't have to fly.
Yeah. Is there such a thing as a Queen Mary still? The is
The
no,
cute.
is the QE? Is it Queen Elizabeth? Which one
Yeah.
is it? Okay.
There's a few of them though that do the
Okay.
world. My parents were going to do one. They were going to do a half world cruise. They weren't doing the whole world. They were going to start in, we had it all planned and everything. And then just things happen health wise. They're just not going to go there for that long. But they were going to start in South Africa actually, and then go up to the Mediterranean, through the Mediterranean, across the Atlantic, and
Mm.
then back through. They were going to hit Fort Lauderdale and then go through the Panama Canal and end up in LA. And we were planning on meeting them. We were planning on surprising them in Fort Lauderdale and going to the Panama with them because we just didn't know that if how many more they're going to do at their age. But then they just decided they're not ready to take. They don't think they want to do that long of a trip anymore. So
How long is that? How many is it like a month or two?
oh, that was a half world. No, it was. I think it was leaving in February and getting back in May or something, like 3.5 months or something. But they have cruises that are like 6 months long. So yeah.
Oh, that's hard to comprehend, you know. It
But it's
really
a
is.
whole city on there. They have a medical center. They have, you can get on the internet. I mean, it's not like it used to be where you just don't hear from people. It's
Yeah.
pretty, you know, pretty tech savvy, I guess. And there's a lot of things you can get off when you want. You don't have to get off when you want. They have laundry services. And my parents are at the level where they get free laundry services. They've been on enough cruises.
Oh,
so
it's nice. Nice.
so so they have all of that on there. And some people choose to retire on there are some cruise ships that you can retire on. It's
Really?
cheaper than going on to like a assisted living.
Oh my word. I had no idea.
Yeah.
That's a floating retirement home.
It can be, yeah, not
Jeez.
assisted living, but just people who move to Florida and they just get an apartment, it's kind of like that, but they get to see the world instead. You don't have to, you know, it's
That's
pretty incredible actually.
yeah, that's something to think about. My goodness. Well, we're going to wrap it up here shortly. So, do you have any words of wisdom or advice regarding anything for our listeners? And then all of your information will be available so they can book with you.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's my favorite. I love trying to find the perfect fit for people. Um, I just, just be careful, don't, like if you're doing airlines, be careful that you're not doing like the last flight in at night during the winter because, you might get stranded or what I'm talking about or check to see. I mean, yeah, it's cheap, but is it worth the two stops and the layovers that you're going to have to do? I just had someone tell me recently, she's like, I did a nonstop from Barcelona to like Boston or something, and I'll never again. It's like, no, you need to split it up a little if you can, because it's a really long flights. So, just be careful and know what you can do.
Yeah, and I imagine when you're interviewing your potential clients, you've got questions so that you can custom fit the flights, the cruises, the whatever they want to do. And so it's not just, you're not just booking, you are tailoring their trips.
Yeah, that's my plan. And that's, want to do. I actually have two different couples on honeymoons right now. One's in Cancun, Mexico, and the other one's in Antigua in the Caribbean. They're not in the same place. And one of them is more of a party resort and the other one's more laid back. I mean, it just kind of just whatever fits the people that are going, that's one of the first questions I'm like is who is going? What do you like to do?
Mhm.
If you want to sit on the beach all day, then you probably don't want to go somewhere that has okay beaches. If you want to go, I mean, it just depends on what you want to do.
Absolutely. I think it's fantastic because you and I had not really even talked about this. I just see your stuff on social media, but it has to be very involved because I've booked my own flights. I've never booked through an agent at all. And thus the Denver airport experience could not have been helped. But I have learned, I did spend a night in San Francisco, and I learned that if you're going to fly through San Francisco, be prepared to stay because of the fog. And did not know that. I flew out of Redmond to San Francisco and we got stuck. So,
I avoid San Francisco as much as possible. For sure. And it's also one of those airports that there's nothing to do there. They don't have, like, when they do have fog, people are all over the floor. I've gotten stuck in there from fog years ago. And it's like, you talk about the bars. Well, yeah, the bars are open, but they're packed and everybody's lined up on the floors. People are stuck there for hours or on end. And there's not enough places for people to sit or hang out. Yeah, San Francisco is one of the ones I avoid. Other people are like, I've never had, any problem in San Francisco. I'm like, you're very lucky
oh, yeah.
because they do have fog and it is an issue. Um, the other thing is I was helping a client do a destination wedding in the Caribbean. And they ended up not being able to do it because every island has different things you have to have. Like they were trying to do it in such a short timeline, they couldn't do it. Like you have to have certain paperwork ready to go. Um, St. Lucia, I think, is the one that has the least amount. You only have to be there 48 hours before the wedding. I mean, so they all have certain things. And so if you're trying to do that on your own and you don't know these things, you could get in some trouble there. So,
Things you don't think about. Yeah. Oh my goodness. And unless you're taking your own wedding officiant with you.
yeah, well, then they probably wouldn't let you because there's rules, regulations, that kind of thing. Like in their country, they might not allow you to do that. So, I mean, even the US, sometimes it's interesting because I've seen people who have had um, mixed marriages and they have a priest and a rabbi or whatever, like
Yeah.
you have to make that happen. You can't just show up.
Yeah,
So,
you got to be prepared for all that. On one of my marriages, I eloped. We eloped to Arizona, and I still under questionable circumstances with the ex. I never understood why, but I had the trip. It was a gift. The trip was to the boulders, and so I'll give them a plug. I would go back there in a heartbeat.
yeah.
It's just a fascinating place, and hearing the coyotes at night and
Oh,
feeling
wow.
feeling sorry for the little rabbits.
Just so long they're out there and not inside.
I know. But really, the coyotes would be under our bungalow and everything. So
Oh, wow.
they were right outside. So, so that was fun. But yeah, we had to hire somebody local to do the wedding and
Yeah.
all that. So it was a bit of a last minute. You can't plan some of this stuff last minute and expect it to be what you want. So
No.
be prepared, listeners. Call Stephanie. She knows her stuff. She's got a passion for travel and a passion to help people. Anybody who's been a school teacher, a wedding photographer, and a travel agent, that shows your heart to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, totally why I went into teaching for sure.
Yeah, well, thank you for being my guest today. It's so great to catch up. And to our audience, thank you for joining me for another podcast. And we'll see you next time with a new guest. And you never know who's going to be on the other side of this camera.
Thank you, Janice.
Thank you.